start with a belief, not a business, let me tell you something that most people get wrong from the very beginning. They start with a business, a plan, a strategy, a way to make money. And on the surface, that seems logical. But logic doesn't build great things. Belief does. When we started Apple, we didn't sit down and say, let's build $1 billion company. That wasn't the goal. The goal was much simpler and much more powerful. We believed that computers could change people's lives. At that time, computers were locked away in big corporations and laboratories. They were intimidating, complicated, built for experts, not for everyday people. But we saw something different. We believed that computers could become personal, that they could be tools for creativity, for expression, for individuals. That belief didn't come with proof. There were no guarantees, no data to support it, no clear roadmap, just a conviction that things could be different. And that conviction is where everything starts. Because when you start with a belief, your work becomes something more than just a product. It becomes a mission. And a mission changes how you think. It changes how you build. It changes how you persist. When things get difficult, because building anything meaningful is hard, there will be obstacles, moments of doubt, times when everything feels like it's falling apart. And in those moments, a business plan won't save you. A strategy won't keep you going. Only belief will. Only that deep sense of purpose will give you the strength to continue. Most people don't have that. They start with the outcome. How can I make money? What will succeed? What is trending right now? And those questions lead to average results because they're based on imitation, on following what already exists instead of creating something new. But when you start with belief, you're not copying, you're creating. You're building something that reflects your vision, your values, your perspective. And that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it powerful. But here's the challenge: belief is not comfortable. It doesn't come with validation. In the beginning, no one sees what you see. No one understands what you're trying to build. In fact, most people will doubt it. They'll question it. They'll criticize it. They'll tell you it's unrealistic. And if your belief is weak, you'll listen. You'll adjust. You'll compromise. You'll slowly move away from your original vision until it becomes something ordinary. That's what happens to most ideas. Not because they weren't good, but because the person behind them didn't believe strongly enough to protect them. Because belief is not just about having an idea. It's about holding on to that idea even when it's challenged, even when it's difficult, even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else. That's what separates creators from followers. Creators believe first and prove later. Followers wait for proof and then follow. But by then, the opportunity is gone because the world doesn't change through certainty. It changes through conviction, through people who are willing to act before the outcome is guaranteed. And that requires courage. The courage to trust your vision, the courage to take risks, the courage to move forward without knowing exactly how it will all work out. Because here's the truth: you will not have all the answers in the beginning. You won't know every step. You won't see the full picture, but you don't need to. You just need to believe enough to take the first step, and then the next, and then the next. Because clarity comes from action, not before it. And as you move forward, your belief gets stronger. Your vision becomes clearer. Your path begins to take shape. But it all starts with that one decision to believe, not in what already exists, but in what could exist, in something better, something different, something meaningful. So don't start with a business. Don't start with a plan. Start with a belief, because businesses can fail. Plans can change. But belief is what carries you through all of it. It's what keeps you going when nothing else does. And if your belief is strong enough, if your vision is clear enough, you won't just build something that works. You'll build something that matters. Something that changes the way people think, the way they live, the way they see the world. And that is how everything great begins. Simplicity is the ultimate power. Let me tell you something that most people misunderstand. They think adding more makes something better. More features, more options, more complexity. But that's not how great things are built. Great things are built by removing, not adding, by simplifying, not complicating. Simplicity is not the absence of effort. It's the result of deep understanding. Because to make something simple, you have to understand it at a level most people never reach. You have to strip away everything unnecessary until only the essential remains. And that's hard. Much harder than adding something new. Anyone can make something more complicated. It takes real discipline to make something simple. When we design products, we didn't start with the question, what can we include? We started with a different question, what can we eliminate? What doesn't need to be here? What can be removed without losing the core experience? Because every extra detail, every unnecessary element creates friction. It slows people down. It confuses them. It takes away from what actually matters. And great design, great innovation is about removing that friction, making things feel natural, effortless, almost invisible. When something is truly simple, people don't notice the complexity behind it. They just experience it. It feels intuitive, like it was always meant to be that way. But what they don't see is the work behind it, the countless decisions, the iterations, the constant refinement. Because simplicity is not something you achieve once. It's something you fight for again and again. Every decision you make adds complexity. And if you're not careful, it builds up. Slowly, quietly, until what was once clear becomes confusing. That's why you have to be intentional. You have to protect simplicity. You have to be willing to say no. No to features that don't add real value. No to ideas that complicate the experience. No to anything that distracts from the core. And that's difficult because sometimes those ideas are good. Sometimes they're interesting, but they're not essential. And if you want to build something great, you have to focus on what's essential. Because simplicity is not about doing less. It's about doing what matters better. And that applies to everything. Not just products, but life. Most people complicate their lives. Too many goals, too many distractions, too many things competing for their attention. And as a result, they lose clarity. They lose focus. They lose direction. But when you simplify, everything changes. You become more focused, more effective, more aligned with what actually matters. You stop chasing everything and start committing to something. And that's where real progress happens. Because complexity divides your energy. Simplicity concentrates it. It gives you the power to go deeper instead of wider, to refine instead of rush, to create something meaningful instead of something average. And here's the most important part. Simplicity is not just about removing things. It's about understanding what truly matters. What is the core idea? What is the purpose? What is the experience you want to create? Once you have that clarity, everything else becomes easier. You know what to keep. You know what to remove. You know what to focus your energy. But without that clarity, you get lost. You add more, hoping it will improve things. But it doesn't. It just creates noise. And noise hides what's important. So if you want to build something great, whether it's a product, a business, or a life focus on simplicity, not as a shortcut, but as a principle, a standard, something you commit to even when it's difficult, because it will be difficult. It will require patience. It will require discipline. It will require you to think deeper and care more. But the result is something powerful, something clear, something that stands out, not because it's complicated, but because it's simple. And in a world full of noise, simplicity is not just an advantage, it's a superpower. Because the people who understand simplicity don't just create better things. They create things that people actually love, things that feel right, things that last. And that is the true power of simplicity. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Let me tell you something that sounds simple, but most people never truly understand it. The moment you think you've made it, you've already started to fall behind. Because success has a hidden danger, comfort. When things start working, when you get recognition, when people begin to respect what you've built, it's easy to slow down, to protect what you have, to stop taking risks, to settle into what's familiar. And that's exactly when creativity dies. That's why you have to stay hungry. Not for money, not for validation, but for growth, for improvement, for the next idea that pushes you beyond where you are right now. Hunger is what keeps you moving. It keeps you curious. It keeps you exploring. It keeps you from becoming satisfied with ever. Because the truth is, average is comfortable, it's predictable, it's safe, but it's also forgettable. And if you want to do something great, you cannot afford to be comfortable. You have to keep asking what's next, how can this be better, what haven't we discovered yet? That mindset is what drives innovation. It's what turns good into great and great into something extraordinary. But hunger alone is not enough. You also have to stay foolish. That's the part most people struggle with. Because being foolish goes against everything you've been taught. You're told to be logical, to be practical, to make safe decisions. But the biggest breakthroughs don't come from logic alone. They come from the willingness to do something that doesn't make sense yet. To believe in an idea before it's proven. To take a risk without knowing the outcome. That looks foolish. From the outside, it often is. But that's where innovation lives. If you only do what makes sense, you will only achieve what's already been done. Because logic works within the boundaries of what exists. But being foolish, that allows you to step outside those boundaries, to explore new possibilities, to create something that no one else has imagined. When we made decisions at Apple, not all of them were safe. Some of them were risky, uncertain, even controversial. But they were driven by a belief, not just by logic. And that belief is what allowed us to do things differently. Because if you wait until everything is proven, you're too late. By then, Someone else has already done it. So you have to be willing to act early, to take that step before you have all the answers. And that requires courage. The courage to look foolish, the courage to be wrong, the courage to try something just because you believe in it. And here's the truth, you will be wrong sometimes. You will make mistakes. You will take risks that don't pay off. But that's part of the process. Because every mistake teaches you something. Every risk expands your perspective. Every failure moves you closer to something better. The real mistake is not taking risks at all, not trying, not exploring, because that leads to stagnation. To a life where nothing changes, nothing grows, nothing evolves, and that's not why you're here. You're here to create, to push boundaries, to discover what's possible, not just what's safe. So you have to protect that mindset. You have to stay curious, even when you become successful. Stay open, even when you gain experience. Stay willing to learn, even when you think you already know. Because the moment you stop learning, you stop growing. And the moment you stop growing, you start falling behind. So don't aim to arrive. Don't aim to reach a point where everything is figured out. That point doesn't exist. Instead, aim to stay in motion, to keep exploring, to keep questioning, to keep pushing yourself beyond what's comfortable. Because that's where the magic happens. That's where new ideas are born. That's where real progress is made. Stay hungry. So you never stop striving. Stay foolish. So you never stop exploring. Because the people who change the world are not the ones who play it safe. They're the ones who are willing to take risks, to look different, to think differently, even when it doesn't make sense, especially when it doesn't make sense. And that is what makes them extraordinary. Build something that outlives you. Let me tell you something that most people avoid thinking about. You are not going to be here forever. And once you truly understand that, not just intellectually, but deeply, it changes the way you see everything. It forces you to ask a different kind of question. Not what can I get, not how can I succeed, but what am I leaving behind? Because in the end, that's what matters. Not the titles, not the money, not the recognition. All of that fades. What remains is what you created, what you contributed, what exists because you were here. Most people don't think this way. They focus on short-term wins, quick results, temporary success, things that feel good now, but don't last. They build for the moment. But if you want to do something truly great, you have to think beyond the moment. You have to think long-term. You have to build something that lasts, something that continues to exist, to grow, to inspire, even when you're not there anymore. When we built Apple, it wasn't just about making products. It was about creating tools that empower people, tools that help them express themselves, create their own ideas, change their own lives. That's how impact works. It doesn't stop with you. It multiplies. It spreads. It becomes something bigger than what you originally imagined. But that only happens if you build with intention, if you care about more than just success. Because building something that lasts requires a different mindset. It requires patience. You don't rush it. Of course, you don't settle for enough. Take the time to refine and improve and push beyond what's easy and aim for what's meaningful. And that takes discipline because the world rewards speed, fast results, quick wins, instant gratification. But lasting impact takes time. It requires you to think deeper, to care more, to go further than what's expected. Because the difference between something temporary and something timeless is the level of intention behind it. Anyone can build something that works. Few people build something that matters, something that people remember, something that people connect with. And connection is what makes something last. Because when people connect with what you create, it becomes part of their lives. It influences how they think, how they feel, how they experience the world. That's impact. And impact is the true measure of success, not numbers, not status, but the difference you make. But here's the challenge: building something that outlives you requires you to think beyond yourself, beyond your immediate needs, beyond your ego, beyond your desire for recognition. You have to focus on the work, on the value it creates, on the people it serves. Because when you focus on that, success becomes a byproduct, not the goal. And that shift changes everything. You stop chasing approval, you start chasing excellence. You stop asking, what will people think? You start asking, what will make this better? And where great work comes from that relentless pursuit of improvement, that refusal to settle, that commitment to creating something meaningful. And here's the truth: you don't have to build something massive. You don't have to change the entire world. You just have to change something, to make something better than it was before, to leave a mark in your own way. Because even small contributions can have lasting impact if they're done with intention, if they're done with care, if they're done with the desire to create something meaningful. So don't think about success as something you achieve. Think about it as something you leave behind. Because one day, everything you have will be gone. But what you build, what you create, what you contribute, that can last. That can continue to exist, to inspire, to make a difference long after you're gone. And that is the kind of success that truly matters. So build something meaningful, build something lasting, build something that outlives you. Because in the end,